And a guy came over to me for Cisco, and he whispered in my ear, he said, Steve, I just don't want you to be offended. This is how they do business now.
Yeah, text.
It was, I mean, that's the transition, that's the difference. They are multitaskers. You know, it's a different perspective. As you are taught as an older generation, you know, mine was suit and tie, it was, you know, face to face, it was eye contact. He said, they just don't do it like that anymore.
Well, thank you for that.
Notes. Some take notes that way.
But it doesn't mean they don't want to.
No.
They haven't been trained properly or led properly in many instances.
Thank you.
This provides an opportunity for executives to do the leadership.
This is exactly on point, because remember the slide back a little bit where talked about high strategy, high touch requirements. The one benefit that, well, one thing I tell baby boomers who are worried about, you know, ageism and everything is, forget about that. You know, take your skills and your experience and turn it into a strength. And one major strength that we've got, to your point, over the millennials is they're high tech, but they're not high touch.
Yeah.
Their interpersonal skills and their communication skills are not so good in most cases.
Correct.
And so that's an area where, you know, we've got a tremendous advantage, and we can use that to help train, develop, and lead these folks. You know, it reminds me of the other big question that, well, one of the biggest questions I get from folks asking why the recruiter doesn't call me back is that, you know, when we start our careers, we had sort of a metric about answering a phone call. If we couldn't answer the phone and we had to take a message, then we had a certain period of time when we had to make that call back.
Right.
You know, it could be 24 hours, it could be less. So, because the telephone was the primary way to communicate, unless you were face to face. Today, the telephone is a productivity tool. Okay, you might communicate with it, but it primarily is a productivity tool. I don't answer the phone for any number that I don't recognize. It goes into voicemail. And then afterwards, I decide, you know, is that somebody that I want to call back? Oftentimes, you know, it's solicitors that are trying to, you know, sell me something, and it's easy to delete that. However, you know, texting is like, you know, hit of dopamine. You know, you got to respond to that text. And, you know, it's even more, Richard probably can really help me with this one, because I am told, I've been married for 43 years, I don't know anything about, you know, the current dating scene out there, but I am told by people that are in the scene, females especially, is that if, you know, it's creepy for a woman nowadays to get a phone call from somebody they might have met, say at a function, a bar, or whatever. They find that creepy. On the other hand, text messages the way they like to communicate. Who knew?
I have two observations on the millennial side. So I used to hire associates, which is the entry level, you know, role at our firm, and I stopped doing that in 2010. And when I stopped, it took us about 20 to 23 people to hire one person. So we'd see 20 to 23 people. As of 2 years ago, that number eclipsed 50. So it takes us 50 interviews to identify one associate.
Just
now,
millennial?
That's their age range, yeah. These people are 23 to 27 years old generally.
Yeah.
They're either right out of school or closely out of school. So it's easier to screen that many people now. It would have been very labor intensive because we used to meet every single person in person at one of our offices. We do a lot over, I saw you had Zoom up. We use Zoom and video conferences frequently now. So I'm told it's less time than it used to take. But the other thing that I've noticed with our group of associates, there's about 150 of these people, is the ones that work and problem solve and not even are strong on the soft skills, there's a massive gap between the good ones and the not good ones, and that has led to a lot of the younger people advancing way more quickly to our firm than some of the guys like us, the old dogs, where it might take you 5, 6, 7 years to get the next opportunity. A lot of these guys are finding opportunity more quickly as the firm grows and as their peers just don't seem to be as interested in working as hard, thinking out of the box, just helping solve problems. So it's interesting.
Work ethic and problem-solving skills are two big factors.
Those are the two big ones. I mean, we deal with a lot of gray things, a lot of gray area. We're analyzing things. Not a week goes by, we're like, oh, I've never seen this before. And so often we're setting them off as the first line on, hey, can you go figure out how to calculate an after-tax return on this hedge fund? And they can't do it quickly. Some of them will be like, I couldn't figure this out. And then you sit with them and help them figure it out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things that I like to tell folks is that, you know, a lot of baby boomers coming out, you know, they, especially if it's a Fortune 500 company, so all they've known in their career, so they want to kind of go back into that same environment. But you know, the Fortune 500 has sort of a model they like to follow. They like to bring people in that, you know, they can train, they can mold, and you know, that'll fit into their culture. I was with PepsiCo for a number of years, and Pepsi was great at that. But you know, as you start to approach 40 years old, you know, it was I think it was their management program to ensure that they didn't have to pay too much money in retirement benefits and pension. And so as you start to approach 40, you know, they were sort of working you out. You know, that's Fortune 500. But the Fortune 500, you know, they're really focused overseas more than they are domestically for most of these companies. A lot of franchising companies that I worked with over the years, you know, they sold off their company stores and turned them into franchise stores. So they could focus on, you know, international. So what I tell folks is that, you know, back to the disruptors, back to the emerging companies and the companies that are going into more rapid growth, that's where the opportunity is. You know, those folks value gray hair a lot more than they do, you know, young kids with the technology skills. They want people that can help them get to the next level and have the, you know, the battle scars and the experience to ensure that they do, as opposed to somebody that, you know, might be able to help them with an app but can't really figure out how to craft strategy.
You know, I think you had mentioned earlier the difference between a generalist and, you know, someone who's very specific in a specific vertical. To your point, I think they start to look more towards the gray hair and the generalist who has a very robust portfolio of experience, you know, on the business development and the sales and the technology and corporate development,
right,
and, you know, all of those areas, so that they can now wear multiple hats, as it were, for those smaller startup environments.
Right, so there's a much bigger premium, you know, for
Yes.
For baby boomers in emerging companies than, you know, even private equity guys. There are so many. It depends on the model that they follow, because some are, you know, like Berkshire Hathaway. Some follow that model. Few, you know, the buy and hold. More people are into, you know, something they can buy cheap and sell dear and make a lot of money.
Right.
Their time horizon is very short, so they need specific things accomplished that will leverage, you know, the purchase price and give them, you know, a bigger return. So they're not so interested in generalists. They're more interested in specialists that come out, especially people that, you know, that may be good at taking a company private, or, you know, from being public, or vice versa, somebody that can take a private company and to an IPO. But that's, again, you have to understand the playing field. So private equity situations are different than startups and emerging companies or Fortune 500, you know, legacy brands.
And even the funds themselves are specializing, right? So they'll be like an industrial and manufacturing private equity fund, and all they do are those types of companies versus a more general fund where they invest in a bunch of different types of
The one thing I found is interesting, though, to me at least, is whereas, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're way over. So this, unless anybody's got any thoughts or questions, I'll make this my last point. To some extent, it'll be a self-serving point too. But whereas I, you know, preach to my search candidates to demonstrate specialization, you know, in a resume, and you know, you can have 1 or 2 or 3 resumes that might focus on one area or another depending on the situation. What I've found is that for independent consultants, the client is less concerned about specialization, especially with respect to the industry. They're more interested in, if you've got a business development need, they're not so worried about if the business development experience you have was exactly in their industry segment. Because they appreciate that, things have changed and the learning is transferable. So that was an interesting finding to me. There's some, needs obviously that are very specialized. If you're gonna, upgrade a software package or something, for instance, then you might need to have experience with that particular software package or whatever you're upgrading. But for more of the strategic kind of roles that a independent consultant might play, more generalized experience is not necessarily a handicap. I hope this was helpful. At least you'll go back and see Heartbreak Ridge. It was, it was a campy movie, but there were some interesting spots in it. But I think the whole point is, think about ways to improvise and adapt to the current environment, and got to understand the playing field to do that. Well, thanks again for coming. Hope to see you at the next meeting. And if you want to stick around and continue the conversation, you're welcome to.